The 45% faster GPU never shows up in most games. Sony's PS5 Pro costs 40% more than the Slim, but in most games you'll struggle to see the difference. The 2TB SSD is genuinely generous, double the base PS5 storage. You'll fit 15 to 20 AAA titles without touching the internal drive, which matters when games like Call of Duty eat 200 GB each. It's the one spec where the Pro feels truly premium. PSSR upscaling is the real deal in supported titles like Spider-Man 2 and Ratchet & Clank. It reconstructs 4K detail from a 1080p internal render, and the result often beats native 4K for sharpness. When it works, it's a glimpse of the PS6 future. Ray tracing gets a massive boost. You can enable full ray-traced reflections and shadows at 60 frames per second in games that force 30 frames per second on the base PS5. Cyberpunk 2077's overdrive mode is finally playable, and the visual jump is immediately obvious. Backwards compatibility is flawless. Your entire PS4 library gets a free performance bump, with many titles running at locked 60 frames per second that previously struggled. It's a massive value add if you're upgrading from a PS4, not a PS5. The digital-only design keeps the price $50 lower than the disc version, and if you're all digital already, it's a clean, minimalist console. The 120Hz output on 4K displays is also a solid future-proofing step for competitive gamers. Here's what you get. Ray tracing. Immerse yourself in worlds with a new level of realism as rays of light are individually simulated, creating true-to-life shadows and reflections in supported PS5 games. Faster loading. Fast travel across the map, and get back into the game almost instantly with the PlayStation 5 console's ultra-high-speed SSD and fast load times. And stunning visuals. Experience the vast world in stunning 4K and HDR at 120 frames per second with a 4K and HDR-compatible TV or display. The 45% faster GPU is a marketing number, not a real-world gain. Most games run at the same 60 frames per second target as the base PS5, just with slightly higher internal resolutions. In side-by-side tests, players often can't tell the difference without zooming into a screenshot, and that's not worth $200 extra. There's no disk drive, and the optional $79 drive is often out of stock. If you own physical PS4 or PS5 games, you're locked out unless you pay extra. A slap in the face for collectors and budget gamers who rely on used discs. PSSR can introduce shimmering and ghosting artifacts in fast-moving scenes, especially in games not specifically patched for Pro. Titles like Alan Wake 2 and Star Wars Outlaws show distracting trails on foliage and hair, which is worse than the base console's native rendering. At $629, it's $200 more than a PS5 Slim with the same 2TB SSD upgrade cost. For that price gap, you could buy a PS5 Slim and a 2TB NVMe drive, plus 2 full-price games, and you'd still have money left over. The value proposition only makes sense for hardcore 8K early adopters. The 8K output is a paper spec. Almost no games render at native 8K, and PSSR upscaling to 8K is only supported on a handful of titles. If you bought a premium 8K TV, you'll still be playing at 4K, so the 8K-ready marketing feels like a bait-and-switch. The PS5 Pro is the best console Sony has ever made, but it's not the best value. If you're on a PS4 or want the absolute best performance in ray-traced games, it's worth the premium. If you already own a PS5 Slim, skip it. The upgrade is barely noticeable in cross-gen titles, and the price gap is too hard to justify. Check the link in the description for today's best PS5 Pro deals, and let me know in the comments if the Pro tax is worth it for you.